Something is happening inside Iran right now that even the most powerful man in the country cannot stop. The streets are tense, the economy is bleeding, and for the first time in decades, the supreme leader himself is showing signs that he knows the system he built is beginning to crack from the inside. This is not a protest. This is not a riot. This is something far deeper. Something that has been building for years, quietly beneath the surface until now it can no longer be contained, and the world is watching. But here is what most people do not realize. What is breaking inside Iran right now is not just political. It is not just economic. It is something much more fundamental. It is a collapse of belief, a collapse of the social contract between a government and its people. And once that breaks, history tells us nothing can put it back together. So what exactly is happening, and why does it feel different this time? Let us go back to the beginning. Because to understand where Iran is today, you have to understand what Iran was promised. When the Islamic Revolution swept through Iran in 1979, it did not just change a government, it changed everything. The Shah was gone. A new era was declared. The clerics promised dignity, independence, and prosperity. They promised that Iran would rise, that it would be free from foreign control, that the people would finally matter. For a generation, many believed it, but decades have a way of revealing the truth. Today, Iran is a country where a young woman can be arrested for the way she wears her hair, where a worker who has spent 30 years contributing to the system retires into poverty, where a university graduate with dreams and ambition looks around and sees no future, where inflation is eaten through savings like fire through paper, where the currency has lost so much value that ordinary families are making impossible choices every single day. And through all of this, the government has continued to spend billions, not on its people, but on proxy wars, on militias across the region, on missiles and nuclear ambitions, on a foreign policy that has isolated Iran from the global economy and brought wave after wave of devastating sanctions. The people of Iran have been paying the price, and they are no longer willing to stay silent. But what happened next changed everything. In September 2022, a young woman named Mahsa Amini was arrested by the morality police in Tehran. Her crime, according to authorities, was wearing her hijab improperly. Within days, she was dead. The official story was that she suffered a heart attack. But her family, her doctors, and the bruises on her body told a different story. Iran erupted. What followed was not just a protest movement, it was a generational uprising. Young women took to the streets and removed their headscarves in defiance. Young men stood beside them. Schoolgirls chanted slogans against the supreme leader. Workers walked off their jobs. Entire cities joined in. The slogan echoed from Tehran to Zahedin, from Tabriz to Shiraz. Woman, life, freedom. The government cracked down with brutal force. Hundreds were killed, thousands were arrested, some were executed. The international community watched in horror, but something had already changed that could not be undone. The fear was gone. This is where things take a serious turn. Because throughout history, authoritarian systems do not fall simply because people are suffering. Suffering alone does not bring down governments. What brings down governments is when the people stop being afraid, when the psychological contract of fear that holds the system together is broken. And in Iran, that contract is broken. You can see it in the way young people speak online, openly, despite knowing they are being watched. You can see it in the way women continue to appear in public without headscarves in certain areas, a quiet, daily act of defiance that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. You can see it in the graffiti, in the art, in the music being made underground and shared across borders. The regime knows this. And the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, a man who has ruled Iran for over 3 decades, a man who has survived wars, sanctions, assassinations of key allies, and multiple waves of unrest, even he cannot ignore what is now staring him in the face. His own intelligence services are telling him. His own inner circle is divided. His own son, Mojtaba Khamenei, who many believe is being positioned as a potential successor, is operating in the shadows, trying to consolidate power before it is too late. The question of succession is no longer theoretical. It is urgent. Khamenei is in his mid-80s. His health has been a closely guarded state secret for years, but sources close to the situation have consistently suggested that his condition is deteriorating, and the system he built, a system that was designed to be permanent, is showing cracks precisely at the moment when it can least afford to. What most people do not realize is that the Islamic Republic was never just a political system. It was a theological claim. It was built on the idea that God had ordained this government, that the supreme leader was not just a political figure, but a divine representative, that to oppose the system was not just illegal, it was spiritually wrong. For 45 years, that theological claim was the ultimate weapon of the regime. It kept millions passive. It gave the Revolutionary Guards a sacred justification for every act of violence. It made the clerics untouchable. But today, something remarkable is happening in the seminaries of Qom, the holiest city in Iran, the spiritual heart of the Islamic Republic itself. Senior clerics, men who have spent their entire lives inside the system, are beginning to distance themselves. Quietly, carefully, in the coded language of religious scholarship, some of the most respected religious voices in the country are signaling that they no longer fully endorse what is being done in the name of their faith. This is not small. This is enormous. Because if the theological legitimacy of the supreme leader begins to erode from within the religious establishment itself, then the entire foundation of the Islamic Republic is in question. And the regime knows it. But here is where the story becomes even more complicated. Because Iran is not just facing an internal crisis, it is facing an external one at the same time. And the two are feeding each other in ways that are accelerating the collapse. For decades, Iran built what its leaders called an axis of resistance, a network of proxy forces and allied movements stretching from Lebanon to Iraq to Syria to Yemen and beyond. Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, various militias in Iraq and Syria, Hamas in Gaza. This network was the crown jewel of Iranian foreign policy. It was the proof that Iran could project power far beyond its borders without ever having to fight directly. It was also extraordinarily expensive, and it created enemies everywhere. Then, in late 2023 and into 2024, the network began to take devastating blows. The conflict in Gaza pulled Hezbollah into open confrontation with Israel on a scale not seen since 2006. And this time, the outcome was catastrophic for Iran's most powerful proxy. Hezbollah's senior leadership was systematically eliminated. Its commander, Hassan Nasrallah, a man who had been the face of the organization for 30 years, was killed in an Israeli airstrike in Beirut. The group that Iran had spent billions building, the group that was supposed to be the most powerful non-state military force in the world, was left broken and leaderless. The psychological impact inside Iran was staggering, because Hezbollah was not just a proxy, it was a symbol. It was proof that the Islamic Republic's strategy worked, that Iran could punch above its weight, that the resistance axis was real and powerful and unstoppable. When Nasrallah died, that symbol died with him, and then Syria fell. This is where things take another serious turn. Bashar al-Assad, the Syrian dictator who had survived a decade of civil war only because of Iranian and Russian support, collapsed almost overnight in late 2024. Rebel forces swept through the country with shocking speed. Damascus fell, Assad fled, and with him went one of the most critical links in Iran's regional network. Syria was not just an ally, it was the land bridge, the physical corridor through which Iran moved weapons, money, and fighters to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Without Syria, that corridor is gone. In the span of months, Iran lost its most powerful proxy force and its most critical regional partner. The axis of resistance, which had taken 40 years and hundreds of billions of dollars to build, was shattered. Back home in Tehran, the reaction was not grief, it was fury, not at Israel, not at the rebels in Syria, but at the Islamic Republic itself. People took to social media. They mocked the government openly. They asked the question that the regime could not answer. We have been told for decades that our suffering, our poverty, our sanctions, our isolation, all of it was worth it because we were building something powerful, because Iran was rising, because the resistance was winning. So what happened? The government had no answer, and the economic situation, which had already been catastrophic, got worse. Iran's currency, the Rial, has been in freefall for years. Inflation has run at levels that destroy savings and crush the middle class. Unemployment among young people has reached levels that create entire generations with no stake in the existing system. The oil revenues that once funded the state have been gutted by sanctions. The diversification of the economy that was promised never came. Meanwhile, ordinary Iranians watch as the Revolutionary Guards and their business networks control vast portions of the economy. The same people who enforce the rules, who arrest women for their clothing, who crush protests, are also the people getting rich. The corruption is not hidden. It is visible, brazen, and enraging. A young Iranian professional today has three choices: leave the country, suffer in silence, or resist. More and more are choosing to leave. Iran has been experiencing one of the most severe brain drains of any country in the world. Doctors, engineers, scientists, entrepreneurs, artists, the very people a country needs to build its future, are fleeing in enormous numbers. They're going to Canada, to Germany, to the United Arab Emirates, to Turkey, to anywhere that offers a future. Every single one of them who leaves is a vote of no confidence in the Islamic Republic. But what happened next changed everything again, because outside pressure is now arriving from multiple directions simultaneously, and the timing could not be worse for the regime. The United States, under the Trump administration returning to power in 2025, immediately reinstated and intensified the maximum pressure campaign. New sanctions were layered onto old ones. Oil exports, which had found some relief in the final years of the Biden administration through quieter enforcement, were targeted again. The goal, stated openly, was to reduce Iran's oil revenues to zero. At the same time, nuclear negotiations, which had flickered on and off for years without resolution, collapsed entirely. Iran has continued advancing its nuclear program, enriching uranium to levels just short of weapons grade. The International Atomic Energy Agency has been raising alarms with increasing urgency. Israel has made clear, repeatedly and loudly, that it will not allow Iran to cross the nuclear threshold. The danger of direct military confrontation between Israel and Iran is higher today than at any point in modern history. And here is what makes this moment uniquely terrifying. In the past, Iranian leaders could rally the population around an external threat, when America was the enemy, when Israel was attacking. When sanctions were crushing the country, the government could point outward and say, "This is not our fault. This is being done to you by foreign powers." That narrative is no longer working, because people inside Iran are not looking outward and seeing enemies. They are looking inward and seeing a government that has failed them, a system that has consumed their future, a leadership that has traded their lives for a foreign policy that just collapsed spectacularly. The regime's greatest fear has always been a combination of external pressure and internal collapse happening at the same time. That is exactly what is happening right now. And the supreme leader knows it. There are reports, fragments from insiders, signals in the official state media itself, if you know how to read it, suggesting that the inner circle of the Islamic Republic is no longer unified, that factions are positioning themselves for what comes after, that the question is no longer whether the system will change, but how and who will be standing when it does. The Revolutionary Guards, the most powerful institution in the country, more powerful even than the elected government, are also internally divided. Some hardliners want to double down, use maximum force, show no mercy, make resistance so costly that people give up. But others inside the Guards understand what history shows, that this approach has a limit, that when a population is sufficiently desperate and sufficiently angry, no amount of force can hold things together permanently, that the only question becomes whether the transition is managed or catastrophic. This is the conversation happening behind closed doors in Tehran right now. Meanwhile, the people of Iran are not waiting for that conversation to finish. A new generation has grown up with smartphones and social media and connections to the outside world that previous generations never had. They can see how people live in other countries. They can see that the suffering they experience is not inevitable. They know that other nations have development, have freedom, have dignity. They know that what they are living through is a choice that was made for them, not by them. And they are done accepting that choice. The Islamic Republic spent 45 years trying to build a society sealed off from certain ideas. But ideas cannot be sealed away forever. The more you try to contain them, the more pressure builds up. And eventually, the seal breaks. It is breaking right now. What comes next is the question no one can answer with certainty. History never moves in straight lines. Revolutions are chaotic. Transitions are dangerous. The path from here to something different could be long and painful. There may be more crackdowns, more arrests, more executions. The regime still has enormous capacity for violence, and it will use it. But something fundamental has shifted that cannot be shifted back. The Islamic Republic of Iran is no longer just facing a challenge. It is facing a question of survival. And for the first time in its history, the people asking that question are not outsiders. They are not foreign enemies. They are the children and grandchildren of the revolution itself. They grew up inside the system. They were educated by it. They were supposed to carry it forward. Instead, they are the ones who have decided it has to end. Ali Khamenei has ruled Iran for 35 years. He has outlasted presidents and reformers and protest movements and wars. He has seen challengers come and go. He has believed, perhaps genuinely, that the system he leads is divinely protected. But standing at the edge of his own mortality, watching the regional empire he built turn to dust, watching the economy suffocate his people, watching a generation that no longer fears him, look him in the eye and demand something different. Even he must now understand something that no amount of theological certainty can hide. The world that made the Islamic Republic possible is gone. And what comes next for Iran, for the region, for the world, will be one of the most consequential stories of our time. The fuse has been burning for a long time. Right now in Tehran, in Qom, in the streets, in the seminaries, in the corridors of power, everyone is watching to see how much fuse is left. And no one, not even the supreme leader, knows the answer.